So, you're looking for a new monitor? Well, I think I've found the perfect monitor that ticks all the boxes you could possibly want in one. We're going to check it out in a minute. Before we get into the monitor, what are the main things you tend to look for when you're going to purchase a new monitor? You look at panel size, the resolution, the refresh rate, the response time, and you'll want to know if it's for G-Sync or FreeSync depending on which graphics card you're running. And you might be interested in what panel type it is, whether it's TN, VA or IPS. So, first thing that we'll look at is the size. This just comes down to personal preference, but I think the most common size that people look for is 27 inches, depending on your budget or the size of the room and what you can afford, just personal preference really. Then it comes down to the panel type potentially. This is where it gets a little bit finicky. I'm not going to talk so much about the VA panels because I think they're kind of being phased out with how good the TN panels and the IPS panels are becoming. If you're going for fast refresh rate, you will tend to go for a TN panel, but then you're going to have to compromise, and usually you're going to have to compromise in terms of your color quality. So you'll get higher refresh rate, but you'll get less colors on the other hand. Then you might think, well, we'll just go for an IPS panel. And then usually an IPS panel, you'd have the colours, but then you're going to sacrifice your refresh time and sometimes the response time. As technology has gone on, there are a lot of IPS panels now that are 1 millisecond. In fact, 1 millisecond response time tends to be the norm now for pretty much any panel. Then you look at your resolution. And I think most people still are actually, according to Steam, I think 1080p is still the most popular resolution that people are gaming at. With things moving on, you've got 1440p and you've got 4K. Personally, I would prefer to stay at 1440p rather than going up to 4K because you're still not going to get the best refresh rates. I think the best refresh rate for the 4K I found in an IPS panel was 144 Hz. So if you stick to the 1440p, you can still hit high refresh rates if that's what you're bothered about. So there are other things that will sway depending on what sort of monitor you go for, whether you're using it for gaming, whether you're going to be using it for editing. Because if you're using it for editing, you're going to want the IPS panel that's going to have all the vivid colours. And then you're going to come down to the nitty gritty specs where it's got HDR and all the contrast ratios if you really want to get into the full specs. So for me, what would be my perfect monitor that'd have everything that I could ever want for gaming, for editing, for streaming? I'd probably go for a 27-inch panel. It'd be 1440p. It'd have 240 Hz refresh rate, just because why would you want that high refresh rate? Especially if you're a first-person shooter gamer. And it'd have to have an IPS panel and preferably HDR because it's just nice, especially with some of the new HDR games coming out, so you don't have to always run at top 100% frame rate if you're not online or whatever. It doesn't really matter. Those are just the things I would like to see from a monitor. So if I was going to look around, I've sort of had a bit of a look at what monitors could potentially be around that sort of perfection level, but tends to always be a compromise. Whether you want the high refresh rate, you're going to lose out on the colours because you're going to go for the TN panel to get the high refresh rate. And then if you want the colours with the HDR, you're going to lose out on the high refresh rate. Well, I'm going to show you a few monitors that nearly tick all the boxes before we show you the big boy that ticks all the boxes. So first one is the LG 27 GL850. Now this is 27 inch, it's nano IPS, that's good. It's got the 1 millisecond gaming monitor with G-Sync, and on top of that it's got 144 Hz, HDR10, which is the standardized HDR. I think it's actually HDR 400 this particular model, so it's not at the top spec HDR, but it's got HDR nevertheless. As you can see, you're having to sacrifice the high refresh rate. I mean, 144 Hz by any means is not terrible, especially for an IPS panel with HDR as well. So looking at the full specs, see the resolution is at the 1440p, that 1 millisecond that we spoke about, IPS 27 inch. The colour is very good, it's 98% for the typical and a minimum of 90. It might actually be HDR 600 looking at that. Don't think it actually gives you that exact, so it just says HDR 10, it doesn't actually give us the HDR rating from what I can see. Next one, very good panel. So this is the Asus TUF Gaming VG279QM. Now this is only 1080p, so again you're having to sacrifice something so that you can have one of the other things that you want. So it's 1080p, IPS monitor, it's HDR 400, so you're not getting quite the vividness as you will with a 600 or even 1000. But if you are looking for 1080p, super fast refresh rate, this is the panel for you. This is the Aorus F127QP. This is almost perfect. It ticks every box you want. 27 inch, 165 Hz refresh rate. It's an IPS panel. It's got HDR display and it's FreeSync and G-Sync compatible. That is pretty much everything you could want in the panel. It's fast. Granted, it's not 240 Hz fast, but not everyone's going to want 240 Hz or needs 240 Hz. And now we get on to, in my opinion, at least on paper, is perfect monitor. It has everything that I've listed at the beginning and it's just incredible. I mean, you literally couldn't put it any better on paper. Let's have a look at the full spec. There are 3 different monitors. Obviously, it's all going to depend on your budget, which one you go for, or your preference. I mean, you might not even want this one. You might want a curved screen, but this is just a flat panel, 27-inch, and because it's usually the most popular, I thought it'd be good to go over it. So you've got the Spectrum QHD 144 Hz, which is probably the baseline. It doesn't have as good a HDR as the other two, and it's obviously a lower refresh rate, but again, it depends on what you want. This is the one I'm talking about, Spectrum 240 Hz IPS panel as well. Bear in mind 1440p, so you're not getting rid of anything. You've got the IPS panel, you've got the high refresh rate and the resolution, and as a bonus you've got HDR10, which is certified to HDR 600. Not the best one, because the best one is HDR 1000, but that is still incredibly impressive. And you can see the colour is 98%, the maximum 100% on sRGB, and colour depth is 10-bit, so it's this better spec than the Aorus. I mean, the Aorus is a fantastic monitor by all means. It was something I would have considered upgrading to because that was perfect, but then I discovered this, and now this has to be the one, if I was to upgrade, that I would get, because it has all the boxes like I've already explained. I know I keep going on about it, but it's got high refresh rates, IPS panel, so you're going to get beautiful colouring. Got the HDR, if you've got the HDR compatible games, it is literally the perfect monitor. So there you have it. Let me know what you think about the monitor. For me, it is a perfect monitor. It's got the high refresh rate, the IPS panel, it's 27 inches. As a bonus, it has HDR as well. What more could you want? So let me know in the comments if you found anything better, or there's things you did like or things you didn't like about the monitor. I also stream on Twitch Wednesdays and Friday mornings and Saturday nights. Link in the description for my channel. And let me know what you thought. TTFN.
One enemy remaining. 3 down.